Hi, Mark, and hi, Robert. The other Mark, this time it'll be a lot easier for us to know which Mark people are talking to because only one of us will be talking, and I'm going to presume Robert's always talking to you. So great to see you guys. Thank you for joining this segment. We're going to talk about kind of like as I said earlier, we had a great conversation led by Brooke. Talking about the need for the new model. We had a fantastic session by Tanya talking about the metrics. Now we're talking about the attributes of what makes a modern application security model. But before we get in, Mark, Robert, in that order, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself? So Mark, give us a quick intro.
Sure. Hi, I'm Mark Merkow. I work at a copper mining company in Phoenix, Arizona. I have been in software security since the early 2000s, in information security since the mid-90s, and in IT overall since the mid-1970s. So I've seen it all. Still can't believe most of what I've seen, but yeah, it's been a very interesting journey. A lot of people have helped along the way, and I hope to, by contributing through these efforts, to help the next generation who's going to need as much help as they can get.
Very, very true. And thank you for joining. And Robert, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, Robert Hurlbut, and I have also been doing this for a while. I started as a software developer, so did that for many, many years in the last century. And then towards the beginning of this, about 20 years ago, I started focusing more on application security and helping lots of teams understand about security issues. I think the last 10, 15 years been focused on threat modeling. And I work at 𝗙cie as a principal application security architect and threat modeling lead.
Fantastic. Well, thank you both for joining. And, I think it's interesting that as folks have been joining it, we're all about that 20-year mark. And I think really that's when this all really started and it's just exploded. And the problem that we face is there's just such a broad range of levels of maturity in organizations. And a lot of times people struggle to build a mature practice because they're just doing and not thinking. Right. So kind of and I'll throw this to you first, Mark. It's like, what do you view as kind of some of the building blocks that you need so that you can build an application security program that can be matured? Because you might not be at a high level of maturity today, but you need to get in and set that foundation so you can get to that higher level of maturity as you need to.
Right. So, what I found in the first few years of working in software security, it was more of an attempt to throw tools at it to try and solve the problem, trying to understand it as a technological problem. But around the fourth or fifth year, it dawned on me that software security is really a people problem. And if you treat it that way, the effectiveness of what you're doing starts to show almost immediately. So, getting people to understand that the code that they've been writing for the last how many decades is probably quite insecure. And once they finally learn about what that really means, they come to the understanding that they're the only ones who can fix it. Nobody knows what in their head when they wrote it, they were thinking. So it's very important to them to have all of the elements necessary to attack that problem. So it begins with getting them the right level set, getting everybody on the same page of understanding this is a problem of yours that only you can cure, and we will help you along the way in every way possible. So the building blocks of an initial program basically is to get people aware. That's the first level. And then getting people specifically trained for security activities within their role. And that means different things at different companies, which is why if you use, and I've been advocating this for a long time, using agile techniques and methodology and processes to actually secure agile is one of the most powerful ways you can do it. Because you're not introducing new processes, you're kind of just adding a few attributes here and there. to get people to using what they're already comfortable with and then applying it in different ways. So for example, just by specifying security requirements for features in user stories as acceptance criteria gives you these really powerful mechanisms to control releases of software. Because if the user story can't be completed, then that feature can't get rolled out. So it builds the security in while preserving all of the great things about agile development. We also talked about security champions. One way to implement that is with epic definitions of done. So for a particular feature or epic or however you slice up the work, you can write user stories in the voice of the security champion to make sure that all of the things that you want done get done before that feature can close. So it's really, really powerful, as well as in the training. So the roles are very well defined. If you just simply supplement the training for those roles with security training, you're not really introducing a lot of new processes or new chaos or any of that. It's mostly just enhancing what you've already got.
Great, thank you. And I'm just writing notes on the side, some things to click into there. But before I do that, Robert, take this a little further. Where do what do you see as the building blocks? But also, as we're establishing this, many organizations have multiple teams and multiple facets. How do we reconcile different teams with different tools, different processes, different ecosystems, different priorities?
Well, yeah, I think that different teams. I've worked with, in my experience, with small teams and larger numbers of teams, and one is just having availability of resources. So there's obviously training and making that available, but also other resources that might include some tools to start with and to point them to, okay, how do I solve these problems? So I know for myself as a longtime developer, I remember being a part of a team and learning about security the first time. And where do I go? Who do I talk to? Most developers I've spoken with over the years, being one myself, and then switching more to an AppSec role, is it's not that they don't care about security. They actually do. They really want to know about security. They really want to know more about how can they determine, is this code right? And so just being available for teams to have empathy. That's a word that we hear many more times these days. For security teams to walk alongside. That's why I also support the security champions programs and making those available. So in terms of multiple teams, how do you identify those who would be interested in being a security champion? Sometimes you can use things like capture the flag contests. And there's some of those that are available online. There's some available that you can, if you don't know how to put those together, you can find some good resources to set those up. And those can be opportunities for developers to exercise some of those skills, learn some new skills. And that can also help you find some developers that could transition to be on a security champion program and helping those various teams and help you scale out some of that work as well.
Yeah, and I think both of you touched upon training as being a key element, and I think Robert, you are just buying a tool or even taking a free tool, right, or something embedding in your GitHub, and then just saying, great, we've now got a whole bunch of security issues. If we don't understand what we need to do to remediate them or why they're important, we're kind of back at square one. We're really we've moved one level beyond reactive. We're kind of like in somewhat of a proactive level, but really we're not set up for success. And certainly just training for training's sake is also not going to help us, because we need to really target. I really like, the security champions, concept has come up in every one of the guests. It's really that foundation for us to help scale, I think, and that talks to that organizational buy-in. Now, as you mentioned developers there as well, though, and I think it's really important that we recognize that the dynamic in a security world, and especially in an application security world, has really it's not a carrot stick. It's a governance and guardrails. We want to be able to ensure that we can enable the team to move fast, but in the most safe way possible. Mark, how do you see that works? How do we establish a framework so that I can assist the development team to go fast without actually going off the tracks?
Sure. So the Security Champion program is really important right there as well, because as they become more organized and collected and active, they tend to contribute solutions. So they'll give you reusable code to prevent, SQL injection, and that you use this all the time and you never have to worry about it. And they're keen on doing that because it helps them help themselves. And that becomes organic, and it tends to feed off itself over time, because people really want, as you said, to do a good job. They just need to know what that means and how to achieve it. So the whole community and contributing back to the community and making it, a living organism basically is the most powerful way to resolving lots of issues very quickly and making sure that they don't return over and over and over.
Yeah, and building that community within your organization, so you can just go and tap somebody on the shoulder.
Exactly.
Virtual Slack, I guess, is the tapping on the shoulder these days, right? So you can go and Slack someone and say, hey, I see that you fixed this problem. Do you have a best practice? When we are having a knowledge base that allows us to organizationally kind of like manage that becomes kind of critical. So, as we kind of wrap up this segment, when you look at an organization and you're saying, okay, you've got some tools embedded, you've got some basic process. What do you think are some of the pitfalls that we need to watch out for? What are the things that, as I mature, I need to really make sure that I pay attention to, these things from a scaling perspective? Obviously, security programs is a foundational piece, but maybe I'll throw this to you first, Robert. Kind of like, what would you say that the number one thing was that you would be, hey, as you are adopting and maturing, watch out for this?
Well, I think again, what I was saying about empathy is that disconnect. There can be where you put too much out there and trying and not really working with your teams to see where they are, and so that can certainly be a pitfall. I need to get the latest tools in, and we're just going to throw you 20 tools and hope that you know how to use them.
20,000 violations.
I'm sorry?
And 20,000 findings and vulnerabilities.
Right. And hundreds of false positives, thousands of false positives, and make sure you know how to take care of them. Good luck. Things like that. So I think that could be a pitfall, is that, well, we've got so many things, and we've talked about today OWASP, SAM, and BSIM, and so forth, and they're all great maturity models, but you really have to understand your environment and how do we mature it in terms of addressing where we are. And I think that's a big pitfall, is just overwhelming where we are and what we're doing.
Too fast, too soon.
Yeah, I would agree. Avoiding chaos is really the most important or highly important objective, because people can only deal with so much, and if you overwhelm them, they'll shut down or eventually tell you to go away and don't come back.
Yeah, and I think you want to make sure you don't invalidate your role, which is to reduce risk for the business.
Right.
So, well, Mark, Robert, thank you very much for this. I really appreciate the time today.